You're good to go.
All right, thank you very much. So thank you all for joining today. And I see we've got around 30 people that are in the Zoom, and then we'll have some people joining us on YouTube Live, and then other people who will be watching afterwards. And so we'll be looking at how we can serve different groups, doing group work and exploring this. So I'll go ahead and get into, so those of you who are already connected, if you could do the rename feature. It's just nice for me to get a sense of who's here and where you are at. Actually, I will go ahead and I will rename myself very quickly so that you can see my name, DJ Kaiser, and then I'm going to add St. Louis, Missouri, USA to the end of my name. So this is something when I'm teaching through Zoom I like to do. It helps with adding a little personal touch to your name. Sometimes I'll have people add their favorite word in English or a word that they find that's difficult to pronounce, something else when we are starting classes. But that's just something that will help me out as I'm trying to learn a bit more about UN geography. I also want to give a special thanks to Universidad Pedagógica Nacional Francisco Morazán for sponsoring this conference. This is my third year with this, and so really excited to be here again. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have 3 different audiences. So whether you are with me in Zoom right now, whether you are watching the live stream on YouTube, or whether you're watching this on YouTube afterwards, there will be opportunities for you to participate. So look for those opportunities as we go through. So for something like this, when we talk about group work, I will be talking you through processes, but then actually putting you into some groups. And even if you are not with us live, there will be an opportunity to join one of the groups, and there's an assignment for the group. And I want you to think about how you might be able to use this in your own classroom. So if you are teaching remotely, which many of us during and since the pandemic are still teaching remotely, and we're trying to find good ways to do group work. So I want you to reflect on how you might be able to use this in your own classroom. While I've been working in classes to prepare English teachers, I'm going to be modeling how this can be used in an English classroom. So I'm modifying a bit what I typically do and going to show some other applications for that. So a quick roadmap to today's presentation is a brief discussion about group work, and then how group work can work in remote instruction because it's slightly different. Then look at creating Google Docs and Jamboards that you can use for remote group work. And I'll show you a particular way of doing this, and especially making copies of these and how they can be used in group work. Then we're going to do a demo of a task-based lesson where we're going to use Google Docs and Jamboard. And so we will be asking for that participation so that we can look and see what this feels like, and then we can reflect on that. So first of all, let's go ahead and talk about group work. So the concept of promoting group work goes back many decades. Here's some citations from the 1980s from Long, Pica. And some of the benefits that I have found from group work and that are reflected in the literature are: we get increased student talk time. And when we're working remotely, when we put people into those breakout rooms, we've got the ability to speak more, but also with the Google Docs, more writing time. And so as we're looking at the 4 skills of reading, writing, listening, and speaking, group work where we're using Google Docs can help promote all 4 of those skills. There are more opportunities for interaction. What can also help is we get lowered anxiety because within a group, there are fewer people in that group. So right now, online in Zoom, we've got 36 people. So asking everyone to speak in this group may seem like a bit much, but when we get into groups, it will hopefully feel a lot easier and comfortable to be communicating and working within groups. Also, there's more linguistic input from other students. So they're hearing from different people, not just one source of the instructor or videos and audios that may be selected. So that also is a benefit of group work. So when it comes to group work and remote instruction, I remember when I first had to start converting a lot of my instruction to Zoom. I was thinking, well, how am I going to do this? Because I really like interaction, I like group work, and I don't want to give that up. And I found that there are some really great ways that you can do this using free tools that are available online. And I know that teachers really like that is free tools. So some of the challenges is that as a teacher, you can't walk to different tables and just check in on them. You can have students who may struggle with technology, and also students may lose their connection and then reconnect. So with using Google Docs, there are some ways that we can address this. There actually are ways that we can check in with multiple groups, and I'll show you what that looks like. When we use tools that are more familiar to our students, such as Google, that can make it easier for students to participate. And the other thing I like about Google Docs is they don't take as much bandwidth. So you may have students who are on in Zoom and they lose their connection, but they may be able to get that connection with their Google documents. So that can allow people to remain connected or to connect afterwards. And that's one of the things that we'll take a look at. So this presentation will model the use of Zoom and the breakout room function. And so the two tools we'll use are Google Docs and Jamboard. And the web addresses are pretty easy to remember: docs.google.com and then jamboard.google.com. Let's see what these look like. So some benefits of remote group work that I have found over the past few years is, so managing larger groups on Zoom can be a real challenge, and especially on video conference. So putting students into smaller groups, it makes things a lot more manageable, especially when you have particular tasks and activities. So what I want to show you is using different tabs on a browser so that you can click between the different tabs and then you can check in on different groups. So with breakout rooms, we always have the opportunity to step into different breakout rooms and check in on them, which is something that I do. But I also am able to click on different tabs, and that will help me decide which room I may go into first. And I'll show you what that looks like. What I also like about Google Docs is when it comes to group work, it makes it a lot easier to keep a record of what was done in each of the groups. So when you're doing group work in classes, you can, when you're in person, you can collect everything and then you can scan it and you can share it with people. What I like about Google Docs is everything is there and it's saved, and I can send out those links to everyone in the class. And especially when we have someone who may have missed class, they're able to go to those links and see what's there, and also perhaps even participate even after the class has ended. So here's a screenshot where you see I've got a web browser that's open. And what I like to do when I'm teaching and when I'm using Google Docs is I'll have a window open that only has the tabs that I need for class. So I want to close everything else or put that on a different window. And so here I'm looking at group 3, and I'm going to click to the next page, and boom, if I just click to the next tab, then all of a sudden you can see the next group and what they're doing. And what we're going to see is what I want to model is giving each group something that's slightly different to do as another way of doing group work remotely. So before we get into the actual demo, let's talk a bit about creating Google Docs. And I'm sure that many of us have done this, but there are a few things that I've learned that, especially when we're going to use Google Docs this way, these are little things that can help us out. And At first, I wasn't doing them this way, and once I learned to do it, it changed things for me. So the first thing that you'll need is a Google account, and those are free. And so go to docs.google.com. If you've got your own Gmail account, then you log in. Some of us have more than one Google account, so make sure that you're on the correct Google account that you want to be using, or you can create a new one. Once you're in Google Docs, you're going to click this plus sign, and this plus sign is going to be more towards the top of the page. And I'm telling you this because when we get into Jamboard, we're going to see that that plus sign is on the bottom of the page. So they're both Google tools, but how we use them is just a little bit different. So we click that plus sign for a blank document. You can change the title of the document up at the top. We'll talk about the share feature. The share feature is going to be extremely important with Google Docs. And if we don't get this right, it can cause a little bit of frustration. We can fix that on the go. But first few times that I was doing this, this is where I ran into issues. And so we'll talk about that. And then you've got the Google document itself, where you create your activity on that Google document. If you happen to have your materials prepared, perhaps in Microsoft Word, you can copy and paste that into a Google document so that you don't have to do everything from scratch. I have colleagues who have done a lot in terms of adding different graphics and making things even more colorful. What I'm going to be modeling is more of the simplified, lower, it may sound odd to say low tech because we are using all technology here, but not as many bells and whistles because sometimes I'm creating a lot of material. So I wanted to demo something that I was able to put together very quickly because many of us are teaching multiple classes and need to prepare a lot in a short amount of time. So things with Google Docs that are important to know is they do work best when you're connected to the internet. There are some features you can use offline, but you really do want to be connected to the internet for that. What I like about Google Documents is that they automatically save your Google Docs, and they automatically go into a Google Drive that's associated with your Google account. So this is another great way to organize, and I'll show you that you can create specific folders for specific classes or specific purposes, and then save all those files in a particular folder. This is helpful when you come back to teaching the same class at a different time, or when you want to recycle materials, because most teachers I know, they create great materials and then they recycle those materials. So having them organized can really help. So this is what Google Drive looks like. So here's an example where you can see I've got different folders that are here, and you notice that I've got one for this conference, got one for a class that I'm teaching now, one for another conference that was earlier this year, or two other conferences earlier this year. So we can save them into folders just as we would in most other programs. And then this just shows different files that we're going to look at. So we're actually going to use these Google Docs when we get into our group work. And I just noticed that my hand raised because I had my hand up. Okay. Then Jamboard. So Jamboard, this was a newer one for me. I tried using the whiteboard feature in Zoom and found that it was a bit of a challenge. So I was introduced to Jamboard by some teachers I worked with. And it's a free Google Whiteboard tool. You just go to jamboard.google.com. You use your same Google account. And these also save into your Google Drive. So what I like is I can use Google Docs and Jamboard, and it will all save into the same folder. So with Jamboard, and these are actually going to be the Jamboards that we're going to use. So each group will be on one of these. But there is, if you look here at the bottom, this the plus sign is here, and this is where you create a new Jamboard. So again, I was showing you with Docs, it's up in the top, and then with Jamboard, it's in the bottom. Another thing that took me at first, I didn't quite see this, and so I had to learn, is we can create additional pages for our Jamboard. So you create a Jamboard and there's page 1 and it will start with 1 of 1. But if you click the little arrow or the little triangle that's beneath, what you'll be able to do is add. And so if I click the first plus sign, I'll get a new Jamboard that goes before the first. If I click the second one, it will go between the two. And if I click the third, it will go afterwards. Another thing that's important is if you create something that has a background, which is what I have done here, then clicking the 3 dots allows you to duplicate it. So if you get a format that you like, then you can duplicate that, and that can save you time. So here's one of the most important things when we're preparing for group work using Google Tools. So the default for docs and Jamboards is to be restricted. And restricted means that only you who created it will be able to make changes to it. So you want to make sure that each document that you want your students to participate in is shared with anyone with the link. And I'll show you what this looks like. There's a little drop-down menu, and you'll want that anyone with the link. And then the other thing that you need to do is set the role to editor. Otherwise, it's viewer, and your students will be able to see the documents, but they won't be able to participate. And I have here that this part is very important. And over the past few years, I've had many cases where I have forgotten to turn on the editor feature for students. And so I've had to, during class, turn that on. So I want to stress that. If it happens, don't worry, you can go into the document itself and change that setting. And I'm going to show you what that looks like here. So when you go and share, so if we go back up here, I'm trying to see, if we see here in the top right, we've got this share. So if you click that share, what that will do is it will bring up this window. And this is actually the window for a Google Doc. So it's going to look just a little bit different for the Jamboard, but it's going to have the same features. So I want to change it from restricted to anyone with the link. And if you notice here, it says viewer. So right now it's set for viewer. So the next thing I want to do is then click on viewer. And then I'm going to change it to editor. You can make a commenter where they can make comments, but not change the document. So if you want people to only add comments to it, you can do that. I like to make it where students can be editors in the document. So those are the two things that I always want to change for these collaborative documents, whether it is a Google Doc or is a Jamboard. After I've done that, then I can go to the copy link, and I use that link, and then I keep copies of that I can send out to people through email, through the chat, and I will be sending out through the chat the different links that we will be using so that we can use those in this when we get to the group work part. So next, making copies can be really important. So when we create a document, there's one document. And if you put, so we're going to use 4 groups today. That's what I prepared for, is 4 groups. If I give all 4 groups the same link, then all 4 groups are on the same document, and they will all be writing on the same document. You may have an activity where you want it to be like that. But if you have activities where it's group work and you want a group to be only on their document, then you need to create separate documents for each of the groups. So after you create your original copy or your first copy, make sure that you share the document and set the role to editor before you make the copies. This is really important. Then what I like to do is, and I've learned this the hard way, is to save them with the group name or the group number in the title and have that at the beginning of the title. The reason for that is when you get tabs, you want that group number to be at the beginning so you can see it. If you have a long title and put group 1 at the end and then group 2 at the end, you won't be able to see it on the tab. And when you click through tabs, you won't be able to know what it is until you've clicked on that tab. So it's just a little thing that I've learned over the years. But when you save, when you create a copy and save it, select share with the same people. I'm going to show you what this looks like, because this is another thing that will save you a lot of time. So what we're really looking at here is we're looking at materials development. So we're talking about group work, but we're doing materials development using online tools. And there's a process to this that can help us save time and make our classes more engaging. Because the easier this is for us and the easier it is for students, then the better that everything goes. So when I go to copy this document, what I'll do here, and if you notice here, so I changed this later. So I put Kaiser UPNFM 2023 group 3, and I found, then what I saw was Kaiser, 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 Kaiser on all the tabs. So I put group 3 to the front, then group 2 to the front, group 1 to the front. So I changed that after I made this screenshot. But I click this, share it with the same people. And then here with this folder, you can select which folder it goes into. So I like to organize everything into one folder so that I can find things more easily. So there are different ways to save. When we are in Google Docs, we're going to go to File. You click on File and then Make a Copy. Also, one of the things I want to let you know is all of these slides I have available as PDFs. And you're all going to get a link to a document that has a link to all of the Google Docs and the Jamboards, and we'll have a link to a PDF of the slides. So there are a lot of screenshots here, and I did that so that you can use this as a guide at a later time, because I know I'm going through this fairly quickly because I want to get to the demo portion. So just keep that in mind, that you'll be able to come back and review those slides. So in Google Docs, we will do File, Make a Copy. In Jamboard, you're going to click these 3 dots, and then you do Make a Copy. So again, even though they're both Google tools, the way they're organized and find things is just a little bit different. So while I was preparing for this and trying to quickly put together materials, I had to change a little bit, so I wanted to alert you to that. So some advantages to Google tools is they're free, as we talked about. They are accessible to most students unless Google is blocked, which does happen in some cases. What I love is that multiple users can edit at the same time. So I have done group work where I put students into groups and tell them, write a paragraph together, and one student opens up a document on their screen, and they are the only one who is able to type. When you prepare a Google Docs and you set them up correctly, then everyone is able to edit, everyone is able to participate, and that increases that, that student talk, that student writing time. Documents autosave, that's a great thing because I use Microsoft Word a lot and I forget to save things and I have lost work. With Google Docs, it saves for you automatically. Also, when students get disconnected from class, they may still be able to access the Google documents. I've had this happen. So I do a lot of work with students in Uzbekistan where connections are not as strong, and they may keep their connection to the Google Doc, but being able to connect to the video and audio live is a challenge. And then also students can easily revisit the Google documents after class has ended. So what I'll do is I will send out the links to all of the different Google Docs that we used, because often when we come back together, I'll put notes in the work that they've done. So we're going to get to the demo in just a moment, but a few more important things. Test out all of your links to your Google Docs and your Jamboards on a device where you're not logged into your Google account. So you want to make sure that other people are going to be able to access this. So I have a different browser that I use, and it's a browser where it logs out of everything whenever I close it and then come back on. So I'll open the new browser window, and then I'll try these links to make sure that I can edit all of them. And I will tell you that in preparing for this very presentation, I did this testing out, and I found that one of the documents that I wanted you all to have access to was still restricted. And so I was able to update that access. So hopefully everything will work and you all will be able to participate. So we're going to get to the fun part now, which is the demo. So I'm going to put up on the screen a QR code, and there is also a link. And so I'm going to take the link and I'm going to put this in our chat here. So if you look in the chat, let's see, here we go. All right. So that's going to take you to a document, and I'm going to end up putting the people who are live in Zoom into groups. And so you'll either be, if you're in room 1, then you're going to be in group 1. If you're in room 2, you're going to be in group 2, and so on. If you are watching live on YouTube, then what I'm going to ask is that you select a group based on the month in which you were born. And I'm going to show you what this looks like. Now, here's the nice thing is I've got this Google document and I have it up on the screen, and I can see right now that 2 different people have connected. So this lets me know that people have gotten this, and I can start to see who has connected. So if you are not with me live on Zoom, if you're on YouTube live or afterwards, here's how we're going to do your group assignment. If your birthday is in January, February, or March, then you'll go into group 1. If it's in April, May, or June, then you'll go into group 2. July, August, or September, you'll go into group 3. And then October, November, December, you'll go into group 4. And these group assignments are on the Google document that I linked to. So if you use the QR code or the tiny URL, you will get to that. I really like using tiny URLs because sometimes people will click on a link and sometimes they need to type it in because they might be on a different device. I have a lot of students who will connect to audio and video on one device, but then they'll end up using another device in order to work on their Google Docs. So having that there will help with that. So in a normal class, I will set up time for each of the tasks. We have less than a half an hour now to go through this, and so we're not going to get through the whole activity. So the other thing I do in class is I'll have students do a task, and when the time's up, we all come back, and then they show what they worked on, and I'll have different groups share their document, or I can share their document, and then I can actually go in and edit and comment as we go through. But in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you to just go ahead and work through, do 1 or 2 things for each of the tasks and kind of work through, and then also get to the Jamboard. So for those of you who are connecting later, not live, you'll be able to connect to these documents, and then you'll be able to add to these documents. So what I'm going to do is we're going to try this out, and we're going to do 15 minutes. So I'm going to stop sharing here. Oops. And let me show you very quickly what I've got pulled up here. So I need to make sure that I click on the correct. Okay, so this is what we're going to be working with. As you will see, I've got different links that are here. So we're going to have different groups. And so it looks like some people are already clicking on different groups. So these may be people who are on YouTube, who are watching live. But what I'm going to do on another document, I put here the direct links for your different Google Docs. So I'm going to do this in the chat. So for those of you who are in Zoom, I'm going to put the links for chat. And then I'm going to put you into groups. So let me stop sharing. And we will try this out. So breakout rooms. We're going to do 4 breakout rooms. And it looks like it's not going to allow me to set a timer. So I'm going to set a timer on my phone, which is totally fine. I'm actually going to make it just a little bit slower of 13 minutes. So I encourage you to go into the groups, and then I'll continue with this and kind of show what this looks like. So for those of you who are not going into the groups, one of the other things that I like about using breakout rooms in Zoom is it's a helpful way for me to see who's still connected. So sometimes students connect and then they're not there. So if they don't connect to their room, then that helps me know in a class in terms of classroom management. Sometimes there's a problem, and I found that they've actually gotten logged off, but they're still logged in on the on Zoom, and then they rejoin, and that helps out there. So I'm going to see as people are going in, and I'm going to see if it's going to allow me while they're in groups. For those of you who are on YouTube, either live or in watching afterwards, I'm going to share my screen and go back to the document. And what we're going to be able to see here is, so now I'm in group 1, and I'm able to see here that 3 different people are connected to group 1. With group 2, I've got 4 different people that are connected. What I can see here is with group 2, they've already started working on this first task. So for me as a teacher, in terms of monitoring group work, this is really helpful to see that group 2 is already working. Group 1 hasn't started yet. Let's take a look at group 3. So group 3 hasn't started yet. And then group 4, so only one person is attached to group 4 right now. So by clicking on these different tabs, I'm able to see where different groups are in terms of doing work. So in terms of classroom management, of doing group work remotely and using Google Docs, what I like to do is I put students into groups, and then I right away start to look at the tab. So rather than right away joining a group, I want to see which groups are already working. So group 2 is probably going to be the last group that I check in on because they are already going. So now we see anonymous anteaters here. And so group 1 is starting to do some work. So that is good for me to see. So group 3 is here. And what I can do is on the document, I can say, please begin working on task 1. Add your verbs and phrases above here. So without going into the group, I can go ahead and give them a little nudge. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy and paste this. And I see now there's a cursor that's there, and that lets me know that in group 3, someone is there. So here, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste for group 4. Let's go back and let's see with group 1. So see wild animals. So good. So this first group is working on snowy mountain vacation. The second group is working on beach vacation. So this is the other thing that I want to talk about. So while the groups are working, I made a choice here. Oftentimes when I do group work, I will have one version that all of my groups are doing. What I chose to do was to create something that's slightly different for each of the groups. So what we're doing is we're working toward writing a passage that's using the past tense. And we're going to be looking at regular and irregular past tense verbs. So now typically what I would do in a class is I would actually preview this with the students and say, so we're going to look at this. And I do a little bit of a grammar review or preview it. But here we're working with English teachers. So here we see group 1 is doing well. So here we've got great people working in group 3. Group 4 still not on yet. So I would probably move forward. I would probably go and check in on group 4. Now I could see, is anyone working on task 2? Ooh, let's see. So, yep, so go, so it's seeing, okay, so C, so we've got that has been added there. So I'm able to check to see. Good, we're getting, people are adding to this. So group 1 is moving right ahead onto task 2. So, this is how we can help. Now I remember what I was going to say. Okay, so usually I'll make the same document and just make copies for each of the groups. But for this one, what I wanted to do is to give each of them a slightly different setting. So group 1 is going to write about taking a snowy mountain vacation. And so they're first brainstorming verbs and phrases that they can use. And notice here, they're not focused on the grammar yet. And so just drink hot chocolate, go skiing, see wild animals, eat delicious food, enjoy spending time together, tell nice memories, sleep. Yes, gotta sleep on vacation. So group 1 has snowy mountain vacation. Group 2 has been given beach vacation. Group 3 has been given city vacation. And group 4 has been given a staycation. So staying at home for vacation. So what I also did was I added some examples here. So drink hot chocolate, go skiing, and I modeled asking people to put their name afterwards. I like to do this so that I could see who has contributed. So if we see in group 2, they've done this. So we see who are the different people. They've put their name, or they've put, so I'm going to keep the breakout rooms open. So and if we look at group 3, I've got go to a museum, walk in the park. So I have different examples based on the location that I've chosen. And then I started filling in the chart, and I used verbs from the examples that I added here. So let's see how group 4 is going. Okay, so great. So it looks like group 4 went on to the verbs with present tense, past tense, and then if it's regular or irregular. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that the next task is asking them to go to their Jamboard link. I can see here Anonymous Hamster is on this link. So now we're going to click over and start to look at their Jamboards. So there are 2 different pages on these different Jamboards. The first Jamboard is asking students to take the verbs and phrases that they added in their Google Doc and now to write sentences. So here on this first one, we're going to do present tense. We drink hot chocolate. And the second one, for past tense, we drank hot chocolate. So if I go back and look at the Google Doc, I gave the examples of drink hot chocolate, go skiing. Then in the chart, worked on what's the present tense and the past tense of these. Then when I get to the Jamboard, I'm able to use the language that I've generated and now start to create sentences. Let's take a look and see. So if we look at group 2 is starting to add sentences to present tense. So I swim in the ocean. My aunts cooked asada meat. My friends and I play on the beach every summer. And then here we've got the past tense. So I'm going to do what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a sticky note. Remember, use present tense on this board and past tense on the second board. Click arrow right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's see, did that do that? Here we go. So I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this right here as a note. It's sort of a friendly reminder because here we've got past tense. Now, sometimes we miss instructions and that's totally fine. And then we've got those opportunities to revisit it. So with group 3, I see that they are not working on the Jamboard yet. And with group 4, they are not on the Jamboard yet. So go back to group 2, we see we've got this participation. So here's we go. Now group 2 is working on the second page of their Jamboard. So last summer, I went on a vacation with all my family. And so this is great to see is, and I just, yep. And so people are just kind of moving it around. And as we play with the size, this is one of the things I like about Jamboard is it's really easy to add things. I use this a lot with students, and I find that my students are always better at it than I am, where they add images, they make things more fun. With these Jamboards, I added images to the back. So you'll see I've got here that this is a snowy mountain vacation. Here, this is a beach vacation. Here we've got city vacation with a cityscape. And then here we've got a staycation. So I'll show you really fast how to do that background. So you click on set background. And then if you click on this here image, you go to this and then you can do a search. So go to Google Photos and then you are able to do a search and then find the images that you want. And then you can add those there. So great. Group 1, we've got them. We eat delicious food. We enjoy spending time together. We sleep long hours. So we're finding that they are taking what they did on their Google document and putting it together. So let's go back to the Google document. And let's see for task 4, what they're being asked to do is then to write a complete paragraph. So again, we don't have as much time, but what I've done is developed materials so that you can see what a lesson may look like. And we're just going to see if any of the groups have gotten to this. And if they've had the opportunity to start working on writing their paragraph. And as I predicted, we don't have enough time for that, and that's okay. And then what this is designed to do is students start with the first task where they're brainstorming verbs and phrases. So we're not thinking about verb tense yet. Then we're going to have some focus on form, where we look at what is the verb in the present tense and in the past tense. And then we become aware of whether it's regular or irregular in the past tense. So let me go ahead. I'm going to bring everyone back. And so I'm going to stop this sharing. I'm going to end the breakout rooms. Okay, so everyone will be coming back in about 30 seconds. And then we'll be able to go back and share again. And we can talk through this for the last portion. And okay, good. I'm just checking my slides where I've only got 3 more slides of wrap up. So, okay, so we've got everyone back. People are coming back into the room. Great. Welcome back. Okay, so for those of you who are live on Zoom who went into the groups, I really want to thank you for the work that you were doing in your groups. So I didn't visit your groups, because what I was doing was I was sharing all the different tabs so that people could see what each of the groups were doing. So this is being recorded, and what I encourage you to do is after this presentation, go and watch the video and fast forward to the portion where you were in the groups, and you'll hear me talking about what I'm seeing and talking about classroom management during remote group work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen again and make sure I'm sharing the correct thing. Here we go. So as we see here, we've got group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4. And then we've got the Jamboard, so we could see the work of group 1. And they got to the second board also, which is great. Group 2, so in their first and look at this. So I gave a note here. Those of you who watched, remember, use present tense on this board and past tense on the second board. So I gave this note, and then someone left me a note and said, thanks. Oh my goodness, what does that do for a classroom environment of we're sharing friendly reminders, and as a teacher, I got a thanks. That means a lot to me. So whoever said thanks, thank you. That really makes me feel good. And so we see the different examples here, whether groups got to it or not. So what I want to show you is we're just going to walk through one of these. So the idea is that we start with task 1. And so you've got your setting. So each group had a different setting, and you're brainstorming different verbs and phrases without much focus on the form. Task 2, we become aware of present tense versus past tense, and then we need to know whether the past tense is regular or irregular. So as we see here, saw is irregular, ate is irregular, enjoyed. And so what I would do here is with tell, told, as I'm working with my class and reviewing it, I would go in and I could just change that here and say, so this is actually an irregular verb. And maybe what I'll do is I will highlight this. And that way, this is something that we can focus on, that we remember that this one is an irregular verb. So this is a great way of going through and raising our awareness. So then we go to the Jamboard. So with group 1, we're creating sentences here. We eat delicious food. We enjoy spending time together. And then our past tense, we enjoyed spending time together and we slept long hours. Coming back to our Google Doc, the 4th task, and none of the groups got to this, so don't feel guilty, anyone, because we didn't have enough time. It's all good. It's a demo, but you've got more materials here that you can look at and use so that you can try to replicate this type of thing in your own class. So the idea here is that students would go back and look at the sentences they created and then write a paragraph in the past tense and then underline their verbs. And then after they've underlined their verbs, we want them to look at the verbs that they used and then categorize them by which verbs use the regular past tense and then which verbs were the irregular past tense. So this is really going to be raising our awareness of the regular and irregular. All right, so let me stop sharing here. Actually, before I do that, I just want to quickly show you. So I've got a document here which shows here are the different links for each of the groups. We've got the Jamboard links are here. Here's the link to the PDF. So you can go to this and you'll be able to see all the slides I'm doing today. This I use where I put it in a format that I can quickly copy and paste into the chat. This is something that I've learned and is really important to do. And then just seeing here that this is how I made the tiny URL. So let me go ahead and stop sharing the screen and go back to my slides. So very quickly going to go back into this. And share, and I'm on another screen. So let me move. Here we go. Okay. So notice here that a decision was made to have each group work on a slightly different version. So we had beach, snowy mountain, city, or staycation. I find that for me as a teacher, that just makes things a little more fun. And then when groups get back together, they're seeing what people did of different locations. That kind of adds to the fun and the excitement in class. You can give students the same task to work on in the same setting. And I have done that. And it all depends on the time that we have. And it also depends on the kind of task that we're doing. Sometimes we do want all of our groups doing the same task. Other times we want to give something that's a little bit different. We can also do differentiated instruction. So let's say that we're working with groups and we have higher level and lower level students. So we're working with mixed ability. You can assign them to specific groups, and you can give one group a task that's more advanced because they're the more advanced group, and the other group a less advanced task based on their language abilities. So note that with this demo, there's a combination of both the Google document and the Jamboard. Again, I find that students enjoy working with the visuals. It breaks up the more text-based activities. My students, they create these maps and they bring in all these images and they create things that are a lot more beautiful than I could. That brings me joy as a teacher. And when I compliment my students on how beautiful they make it, and I tell them I couldn't do that, then they've got a strength that they're bringing that they're proud of, and we all learn from each other. And then when they do something really cool, I ask them, how did you do that? So I can learn from them. Notice that this had an explicit focus on language. So I could have just put people in groups and said, so just write a paragraph in the past tense about going on vacation. But this was developed in such a way where it scaffolds, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. So this had an explicit focus on language with the past tense, looking at irregular and irregular verbs. We work with present tense, which typically students have an easier time with, and then we work with those irregular and regular past tense verbs. In English language classrooms, it's extremely important to make clear the kinds of, or the kind of language that's needed. And then, as I noted, if I just asked people to write a past tense story, we may not have gotten what we were looking for. But as we see from the Jamboard, things were being outlined, and so students would be able to get to that. So let's talk about scaffolding. So task one was focused on brainstorming ideas, just verbs and phrases, with no focus on language yet. Then task two required attention to verb tense, and this raises meta-linguistic awareness to regular versus irregular. Then task three converted brainstormed ideas into sentences in two different verb tenses. So we did present tense and we did past tense. We're also doing something that's more visual. And then task four puts those sentences together into a paragraph, moving from simple to more complex. So we brainstorm, we write phrases, or we write sentences, and then we do a paragraph. And then task five was designed to focus on form of what are the regular verbs and what are the irregular verbs. And so that is the end, and I will go ahead and stop sharing because we got right down to the end. And we might have time for just one question. And again, I want to thank all those who were in the groups. So you may have been in the group from being live on Zoom, or you may have been doing that from the YouTube. If you're watching this after the live presentation, you can still go in and you can still participate, add to it, test it out, see what it's like to use these tools. Well, great. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining today. Some of you may have seen me last year, the year before, and I used some different tools. So I wanted to do something that was very different this time, and something that has really helped me a lot with doing group work remotely. So thank you all.
Dr. DJ, it is an amazing opportunity to have all these beautiful techniques that as teachers will be implementing in our classroom and with our students. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your knowledge with all of us. I hope to see you next time in person, not using these technologies. Hopefully, we're going to do all this possible for you to come here, because you have been with us for the third time during these 6 years. So it's been amazing meeting you and having this beautiful moments of knowledge sharing. Thank you so much. Please, everybody, we're going to meet you all in the next session. So please get in touch with everyone, and please go on our Facebook page and our Sway for you to find the next session available for you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Gracias.